Hey, welcome back to another episode of your favorite prophetic program, Strategic Insights. I'm saying that by faith, you know what I mean? we hope someday that we'll crack the top 1 million shows.
I didn't know you didn't.
Well, I don't.
At least 1 million.
It's true. It's true. I mean, how many? It makes you wonder how many people are doing this sort of thing. You know, I mean, the access now is so ridiculously easy when you think about it. You can literally use your cell phone and broadcast live on YouTube. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I just heard that Twitter came out with a new thing where they're going to now allow you to stream live through their service. So, you know, basically anybody that wants to can set up their own little TV channel and, you know, pontificate for the whole.
You're supposed to be helping us here. You're tearing down the whole thing. You're supposed to be building us up.
Well, hey, what can I tell you?
You forgot to introduce everyone.
Yeah. Oh.
Hi, I'm Gary.
Okay.
Oh, what's your name?
I'm Scott.
Oh,
Nice to meet you,
Scott.
Gary.
Okay. Now everybody's introduced each other. Now
So we're all set and ready to go. Is that what you're trying to say?
before you get us into more hot water.
Well, look at that. We're even on the air. See?
Wow.
All right. We're just kind of like having fun here for a moment as we try to get underway and get the chat box in place. Amelia's not here yet, so I have to do the chat box. You know how it is. All right. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about our role in the world. How about that? And just kick around some things concerning what really, honestly, we're supposed to be doing to impact society. And, you know, are we in fact having any discernible impact or any effect on the world around us? Sometimes you wonder, right? All right. So once again, we have a dream.
Yeah, somebody sent in a dream.
All right.
Who shall remain anonymous. And again, just to be serious for me.
Do we have to?
You know, anyone who sends me personally a dream, I'll never read a dream and give their name or give any kind of indication of who they are or any information. So just so people know that.
I mean, I don't even know who they are because you send me the copy.
Oh, no, forget it. I got to X out everything.
No, your secrets are safe with us.
Okay, last night I dreamed I was someplace, maybe a Muslim country, except it looked like a city. And we were allowed outside for a while, but then bells sounded out in the city for a call of prayer. And we were being forced back to the building where we came from. One man refused to go back, and he was murdered in front of the crowd. See, and in dreams, both a building and a city typically represent the church.
Okay.
But here, the fact, like it was as if it was in a Muslim country. I don't believe that's literal.
Yeah.
But what I believe it does mean is that it seems like false religion is overtaking Christianity.
Okay.
In the political realm and in the universities, you know, even in the culture. You know, you could say you're a Muslim, a Hindu, and you won't get the reaction as if you say you're a Christian, where it's okay to be mocked.
Yeah.
And the thing was that they were forced to go back into the building.
Okay.
And if not, the person was murdered. And who knows, one day that could be literal, even in this nation. Right. But for now, what I believe it means is that in some way spiritually assassinated, you know, the standing up today, you know, for the gospel. Just watch any TV show that has a Christian.
Yeah.
The Christian is always the person who is totally prejudiced, totally narrow-minded, backwards.
Yeah.
The way that Christians are presented through the media, just through conversation. You know, all they keep talking about is the owner of the pizza shop in Indiana that wouldn't cater the gay wedding, you know, just target again, and anything of people taking what they believe is their moral stand, you know, as a Christian.
Sure.
You know, whatever you agree with, you know, you can't take a moral stand anymore, not as a Christian. And it's funny that, for example, with the Muslims, they actually will kill gay people in their nations, and a lot of them, you know, tremendous persecution against women. Even in this country, you know, in some of the Muslim communities, that are more open. You know, women can't be who they are. They have to have a veil. You know, lack of liberty. But yet, it's the Christians who are being ridiculed. And because of that, the church seems like they backed off and refused to confront the culture. I don't mean confront in a bad way, but refused to come into the culture, refused to take a stand, refused to infiltrate the culture, refused to become part of it and transform it from the inside. You know, Christianity is seen as church meetings and conferences and gatherings and fellowships. That for most people, that's what Christianity, that's the whole of it. But in the book of Acts, it said, these are the people that turn the world upside down. So something happened between the book of Acts and modern American Christianity. The American church is not turning the world upside down.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I think, you know, the environment in this dream, right? The dreamer feels like I'm in a foreign country that to them has a Muslim feel, right? Now, obviously, that's a hostile environment. And are we in a hostile environment? Some would say, yeah. I mean, obviously we live in a country that provides us with tremendous freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution. You know, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, it's all there. Yet, as you say, when you actually try to exercise religious beliefs in the public square, you know, if you're a Christian, that's verboten. That's not allowed, you know. Now, we understand, right, that the reason why we get singled out, why? It's because it's a warfare thing. It's a spiritual warfare thing. You know, I mean, the enemy's not going to waste his time, you know, coming against, you know, Buddhists and Hindus. Exactly. A kingdom divided, Jesus said, right? It's not going to stand. So we understand that that's why we get singled out, and that we're always going to have those kinds of issues with the world around us and with society around us.
We should rejoice in that. I don't know how, but but right? Isn't that what Jesus said?
He said to rejoice personally if you endure something, but we don't rejoice that the church is not being affected.
No. But rejoice if we're being persecuted.
Right. In the sense, if you're being persecuted, you know, what is he saying? Don't give up because of that. But find joy in it and keep going. And that's what the apostles did. They were persecuted, they were whipped and beaten, but they refused to quit or give up. So what it means by rejoice to me is feel empowered that you're on the right track and just keep pressing forward.
I mean, you're not trying to suggest, are you, that we just deliberately go out there?
No, absolutely not. No spiritual masochism.
Oh, that's why you're not married.
That could
be. I'm telling you, you guys, whew, the jokes just keep rolling.
Well, my wife's not watching, so if she was watching, I wouldn't be saying so.
Well, you know, this is being recorded, brother. Oh my goodness. So that we're in a hostile environment, and in this particular dream, right, the dreamer sees that those who are outside outside the building doing whatever they're doing, they are now being forced back inside the building, which of course is what the world wants. The world doesn't want
Oh, wow.
the church to have its impact outside the four walls of the church.
Wow.
When you're in your church building, right, do whatever you want. We don't care. You can roll around, you can foam, you can, whatever kinds of the crazy stuff you want to do, just keep it there, right? This whole concept of separation of church and state, which is a fallacy if you really study the history, but it has become so entrenched in some folks' minds that it's now become separation of church and the world, church and society, so that you're not allowed to say things or do things, right? Because think about the impression that most folks have of the church. You started to list some things before, but I'm also now thinking about how the world views the church and Christians as prejudiced, bigoted, judgmental, self-righteous, hypocritical, homophobic, all other, phobic that you want to come up with, right? This is the impression, this is what the world has come to believe about the church. Now let's think about this for a minute. Where would they get that idea?
Well, a lot of it is the church's fault.
Oh no!
It's like Bill Johnson said that the church has become defined by what they hate,
Yeah.
not by what they love.
Ooh,
I hate you. Come to Jesus. you can be like me.
Exactly.
But so that's one aspect. But still, even if you show love today, but yet you don't conform to if you're not politically correct, you're still not.
Exactly.
What you say in the greatest love. I've seen people do things in great compassion, but they refuse the political correctness, so they still.
Sure.
But what you're saying is true. The world has given a very bad example.
The church has.
The church has given the world a bad example of who Jesus is. So the world doesn't see Jesus through the church most of the time.
Yeah, in large part, that's the problem. I don't know who else said this, but the church is known more for what we're against than what we're for, because that's what happens. We see folks protesting, going out on the streets with their signs. I'm talking Christians now, to protest against certain things, and whether it's if you go to gay pride parade and you see Christians with their signs and whatnot, and not even talking about Westside Baptist, which is those guys are certified.
They're not Christians.
No, they're not. The abortion debate and how the church has chosen to approach that. Okay, a lot of protests. I got to hand it to Lou Engle and his crew, where they do that silent siege, where they just stand there with tape over their mouths to illustrate that, these babies are being murdered and have no voice. That I can see that kind of protest, because you're not getting in somebody's face, but it's like a prophetic act.
It's not condemning or confrontational, really. It's just taking a stand.
It is taking a stand. Exactly. I want to talk about that too in a minute. But you see folks getting involved in political movements with the idea that if we protest certain things, that we're going to get, legislation to correct the problem.
Wow.
All right. Now, should we want to see good legislation? Yeah, of course. No one's saying don't campaign or don't, strive for legislation that is righteous, that's going to be good for people. But what I'm questioning right now is the methods that a lot of folks have chosen to use to try to affect changes in society through the government. Okay. I have the utmost respect for Dr. James Dobson and folks like that focus on the family and that whole crew. They put out some really good stuff. They've done good things in terms of supporting the family and whatnot. But here's my question. With all that they've done, do we see much in the way of real renewal in terms of families? Or are we seeing even greater fragmentation in the family lives in our country? I mean, it's a legitimate question. What impact has all their political machinations and protests and whatever that they've done, what has it done? We've had the Defense of Marriage Act be gutted at this point, right? The Supreme Court is about to rule on some things concerning gay marriage, right? 36 states now out of 50 allow gay marriage. We're not winning this battle by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, true. I think statistically abortions have declined, over these past. I don't know what the exact time frame is, but I believe that that's true. I have to go back and check it. So there may be some progress on that front. But even in that arena, trying to legislate and make it unlawful for people to do things, what does that do? How does that change people?
Well, there's something I've always said that you could, if the president was a born-again Christian and every congressman and every senator, they were all born again, filled with the Holy Spirit.
And the Supreme Court.
And the Supreme Court, it would be tremendous. There would be powerful things happening. But at the same time, it's not a political issue. It's all a heart issue.
Right.
You can't change the hearts of people, the heart of a nation politically.
Yeah.
Even though, like you said before, it's great to have a Joseph in the Pharaoh's court, or a Daniel, influencing Nebuchadnezzar. I believe God places those.
Sure.
People. But ultimately, the heart of a nation can only be changed spiritually.
Yeah, that's the point, right? Look at Jesus and how he did his ministry during his time. Okay, what entity did he never go after? Think about this. Of all the different groups and entities that were in existence when he was on the earth preaching, what one did he never go after?
Rome.
Exactly. The Roman Empire. Now, the Roman Empire, that was the most oppressive regime that you could imagine. I mean, yeah, they allowed for some freedom, but they were like dictator overlords in Israel, right? So what was going on there? Why would Jesus never address the ills and the wrongs of the Roman Empire? Why did he never speak against Caesar's,
What? I think something that he said, like, must have been his last day, right before the crucifixion, was, they said, well, are you a king? And he said that his kingdom is not of this world.
Right.
I think that's really key. And that's what Gary was talking about, right? That it's a spiritual battle. And that's what he was after, hearts of men. And he knew it was a spiritual thing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't going to be changed politically. That's what the people were expecting, right? God, the Messiah to change,
And to this day, he's not accepted by the Jewish people as the Messiah because he didn't do that.
Yeah.
But he first he has to rule your heart before he can rule the nations. If he would have taken over, defeated the Romans, set up the Jewish people to rule and reign, it would all be gone by now because of the heart issue. Right. So he came to deal with the heart. And that's the only thing that can change people.
Right.
You can't argue. I've tried every kind of thing. I've tried arguing with people.
Yeah.
Trying to convince people.
Yeah.
Pressure people.
How'd that work out for you?
I think I got somebody along the way.
Really? I find that most times you win the battle but lose the war. You might be able to out debate somebody, in terms of that type of conversation.
Sometimes I just lose my temper when I go down that road.
Oh no!
Yeah.
And you're a big guy. I don't believe in Jesus, or I'm gonna smack you.
But he's still not seen as the Messiah because
Mhm.
that was the expectation. Even
Yeah.
afterwards, when he was walking down the road to Emmaus with the two disciples,
Right.
it says their faces were downcast.
Right.
After they heard the news that he had risen from the dead. Can you
Yeah.
imagine that? He heard the news
Yeah.
that Jesus had just come from the dead.
Wow.
And they were sad. Why were they sad? Because Jesus didn't do things in the way they expected. They expected that he was going to kick the Romans out and set up a political kingdom.
Right. Yeah.
And the Jewish people still use the same argument today. Well, if he's the Messiah, how come there's no peace in the world? How come Jewish people are still being killed? You know?
Yeah. No, listen, I understand that. But I think the point that we need to look at and understand is that Jesus did not address the prevailing civil government of his time. And I think very strategically, because it would have totally messed up his ministry. He would have been on their list and they would have just, would have messed up everything, right? But it's not like he didn't raise his voice when he was here. He raised his voice, but where and to whom? That's the question. What's the answer?
Religious structure.
Yeah,
keeping people from really knowing God, right? It was like religion.
Yeah.
Remember the time he got angry and picked up the whip? It wasn't in the world, where it would have made sense to go after those soldiers, though. I mean, they were really bad, those Roman soldiers. They could really oppress people.
Mm-hmm.
Could just come in, take their property, take their house.
Exactly.
He never drove them. That wasn't the source of his anger. The source of his anger was that within the house of God, within the people of God, they were misrepresenting who God was. They were swindling people so that the people were like sheep without a shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
That's where his anger went. See, you could do anything to him.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't get mad. He never got mad. He didn't even open his mouth when they tried to kill him.
Right.
But when people started to, within the religious structure, would oppress the people of God and keep them away from God and misrepresent the Father's heart to them.
Yeah.
He got so mad, he picked up a whip and drove them right up.
Yeah, sure. Because his priority was connecting people with the Father. That's right. That's really what he was after. So he did. He reserved his ire. He reserved, all his protests for those people who were preventing relationship with God. Right. So what do we take from this? Here's the thing. I'm hearing and reading about a lot of people who are now campaigning for us to be even more vocal in our protests about all that's wrong with our country. Certain leaders are saying to pastors, you need to be preaching from your pulpits about all this stuff and getting your people riled up to protest and to speak against all these things that are wrong in America. Along with the other political stuff that's ongoing. Again, I don't have anything against people that want to do that. What troubles me about it is that it's being done seemingly as if it's going to create change. Okay? I read folks who are, fairly high up, if you want to say that, in the leadership of the church. They're saying that it's time for us to rise up as a prophetic voice and begin to declare the truth about the things that are being done wrong in America. Now that sounds like, wow, that's yes, let's stand up and proclaim the truth. Pharisees did that.
Well, the one time in American history where I actually saw it work because it was done with the right heart, was with Martin Luther King, in the black
Okay.
church down south, where they said, we're going to go out, we're going to take a stand, but we're not going to become like them. We're not going to
Exactly.
answer back violence for violence, but we're going to show the love. We're going to demonstrate to the whole world the love of God.
Yeah.
And they totally changed the whole nation.
Yeah.
And that's a picture of the church. It wasn't all about what they said, but people saw them willing to take a stand and get beat up
Yes.
and not hate. They refused to hate. That was the thing with Martin Luther King.
Exactly.
He wouldn't hate,
Sure.
And that's where the church can take a stand, but it's got to be in love like he did.
Right. But here's the problem. There's still this huge idea in a lot of people's minds that says if we can just get the government to legislate against certain things, right, that's going to solve the problem. We need to have judges that are going to, issue verdicts in our favor, and that's going to solve the problems that we have. It's not going to solve the problems.
Oh, they're good things, like you said, but it's not going to change the fabric of the nation.
Because it doesn't change anybody's heart. You see, the issue of abortion, the issue of gay marriage, and all these other things, these are ultimately issues of the heart. People choose, they make choices for their lives based on what they believe, based on what they think, based on what they understand about things, right? And so if we want to see real change happening in our country or in any sphere that we're engaged in, it can only happen through the transformation of people's hearts. It's the only answer. That's what Jesus was engaged in. He didn't waste his time protesting the Roman Empire. He didn't get involved in any kind of political protest. And you had groups that were doing that, right? The Zealots and some of the other guys that were, Barabbas, I guess, was part of that. And that's why he was in jail, right? So you had people that were doing that sort of thing to try to, come against the Roman Empire. But Jesus never joined in with that, Why? Because the ultimate thing that we're called to as the church is not to stand up and proclaim what is wrong.
Wow.
Like you said, Martin Luther King had it right. They stood up with a heart of love to demonstrate, you know what, we're humans just like everybody else. If you cut us, do we not bleed? That whole thing was to help folks see that, yeah, we all are brothers and sisters in this thing. And so what are we, as the church, what are we supposed to do in order to see the changes that the Lord wants to make in this country? How are we going to do this if it's not through protest, if it's not through legislative action?
Well, let me just tell you another time when the church actually impacted the nation.
I wish you would.
Oh, and how it was we go back to the 1800s when you were just a little kid.
Well, just a wee little boy.
and during the days of slavery. And of course, there was always an aspect of the church that somehow said slavery was okay.
Right.
But there were powerful Christians that showed such love that they risked their lives, to begin to have the Underground Railroad. A lot of that was Christians.
Yeah.
Laying down their life, showing love. If you die, I'll die, but I'm going to be with you. I'm going to stand with you.
Yeah.
Harriet Tubman was people don't know the history. She was a prophet. God would give her visions about where to go, about where the people were who were chasing her to bring back the slaves. And she would actually get visions if you read her story.
Wow, that's cool.
So the church, in that way, can, through a showing of love and standing with the persecuted, that where there's injustice, it's not just about marching through the streets,
Right.
but it's about go to those who are being persecuted, standing with them. Isn't that what the Bible said? That's what true religion is.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. No, that's exactly what we're talking about. See, what I think has happened is that I believe that a lot of the church has been deceived about one thing, that we could somehow answer the problems using the same tactics that the enemy uses. Because how does, look at the success of the homosexual lobby, okay? Now, by most estimates, they're only 3% of the population. But if you talk to folks and ask them, well, what percentage of the population do you think is homosexual? You'll get answers like, 10, 15, 20%. It's not true. Now, listen, I have nothing against gays. I've known them. I love everybody. So I'm not prejudiced. I got no problems with that. The point is that I'm trying to make here is that this relatively small segment of our population has been hugely successful in affecting societal change through their protests, through their abilities to influence, right, in the political process, their lobbying, all the things that they have done have been hugely successful in getting their agenda accepted. They're on television.
With the help of the enemy behind them.
Well, of course. But that's my point, is that the tactics that they've used of protest and of political, stuff that they've done that has gotten them what they want, right? Using the media, because they're all over the place in media, right? The church, folks, Christians have looked at that and said, well, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to protest. We're going to use the political system. We're going to try to use the media. We're going to, you know what I'm saying? We're going to use these same tactics to try to overcome, correct, fix, whatever you want to call it, what's being done in our society. Hello? McFly, what's wrong? What's going on here?
Well, we have a good modern day example of how to transform a nation in Heidi Baker. And how did she do it? What'd she say? Just love the one in front of you.
Wow.
Exactly.
And one person at a time. And then that one person can be the key to unlock 100 people, 1,000 people.
Sure.
So,
it's true.
I mean, the whole region is transformed. I mean, not totally, of course, as long as we're in a fallen world.
Yeah.
But a tremendous, I mean, all the churches and the miracles that have been started, and none of it was political.
Right.
It was all just the person who's in front of me right now. I'm going to love you. I'm going to accept you. If the world rejected you, I'm going to take you in. She took people to her house.
Right.
They even killed her cat. Took her kids' stuff, and she wouldn't throw them out. She just kept loving them.
Yeah.
And those are the pastors.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Total transformation.
The same thing with King David. If you look in the Bible, Israel under King Saul was total idolatry, defeat.
Yeah.
And he just loved this bunch of people in a cave. All these people who were in debt, the outcasts, the rabble, people nobody wanted. And he loved them so much they became mighty men who transformed the nation into a godly nation.
Exactly.
But it's always that one person at a time.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I feel like, that the Lord is trying, to help us to recognize that for the most part, we've chosen strategies that are not going to do what he wants, which is heart transformation. right?
Mm.
You know, all your political protests, all of your political infighting and you know, trying to get legislation passed, none of that is going to have any real transformative impact.
Even though it has a place, but it's not the answer.
It's right. Sure. Again, you know, we're responsible people. We want to get involved in our society on all levels, but realizing that where does the true power lie for us, right? I mean, look at how Jesus defined or described the essence of his kingdom, right? He said, "You're salt, you're light," right? He used these analogies to help us understand that we've been given this something that the world doesn't have, right? Salt and light. I mean, what do you think? What does that mean to you, Scott? Tell us.
Scott, because Scott's one of the great Bible scholars of New Jersey.
He
We
is.
got it sitting right here.
We keep that under wraps, though.
Oh yeah, I don't like to brag.
Well, one thing that comes to mind right away is both have influence, salt and light. They
Sure.
influence their surroundings,
Mhm.
because you go into a dark room with a light, the darkness is gone.
Exactly.
And the salt influences the food because it permeates the culture, so to speak. So,
Yeah, that's good. Yep. Amen. I mean, and I love those analogies, you know, because I think they're so easy to understand.
Mm.
Right? I think we've all had the experience of eating something where you forgot the salt.
yeah.
Yeah, the other day,
You know, I mean,
he
sometimes
was too lazy to get up.
Yeah, at the Seder, I wanted to get that bowl with the salt water in it. And put,
you, oh man.
We got off track there a little bit.
No, it's fine. I mean, I made breakfast the other day and forgot to put salt on my eggs, and it was like, oh, something's missing. The salt. So what does that tell you? That, you know, I mean, salt used to be used as a preservative years ago because they didn't have refrigeration, and you know, that's a legitimate use of it. But I don't know, man. I more like the idea of the flavor aspect.
Mm.
That we have a flavor about us. You know, the flavor of the Savior, you know, the atmosphere of heaven, the fragrance of heaven. There's something about us because we carry the presence of God, you know, and that presence is something that it's almost like we don't even have to think about it. It's just there. He's with us, you know, so that when I'm with somebody and you know, realizing that, you know what, Lord, you're here, and you want to touch them. You want them to know your love. You want them to experience something of you. So what are you up to? Mm-hmm. What are you up to? You know what I mean? And you get to bring that flavor into somebody's life. Okay. And the idea behind the light also, I think, is fascinating because obviously you turn a light on, darkness flees. But what does the light really represent? You ever thought about that? What the light itself represents? Because John talks about this in his gospel, right? He says that Jesus is the light of men. His life was the light of men. Now that's a fascinating phrase. His life is the light of men. His life, the way Jesus lived, reveals, which is what light does, reveals what we were originally created for. Isn't that crazy? When you look at Jesus, he's the firstborn among many brethren, it says in Romans 8, right? Paul talks about that. And we know that we're being conformed to his image. So the idea that when you look at Jesus, look at how he lived, what he said, what he did, that is what we're supposed to experience. That's supposed to be my life too, and I get to actually do that. That's being light, right? You said earlier, you're talking about how in these different situations, like with Martin Luther King and the 1800s with slavery, people were being light because they were choosing to treat others in a loving and respectful and honoring way.
Mm.
And it had impact on the society at large. And so Jesus, in his, description of what we are and what we get to do, this is what he's saying. I have not only ordained and commissioned you, I'm sending you out, right, to infiltrate. And he used this awesome example of yeast in a lump of dough. Right? Which, when you think about it, wasn't yeast always considered to be like a negative?
Well,
Symbolically?
typically it is in the Bible, but it's like everything else. It could be positive or negative, like snakes or birds. Snakes and birds are typically negative, but they can also be positive.
Right, sure. There's
But
always
yeah,
exceptions.
it's typically yeast is a negative influence. It symbolizes pride, sin, where it just takes a little bit and it permeates your whole life.
Yeah. And so Jesus took that kind of example and he redeemed it. He said, no, yeast now symbolizes the influence of my presence and my spirit in you, who is designed to now infiltrate every aspect of life around you, right? That we're called to be that not so secret agent to infiltrate wherever God's put us, wherever we've been given a sphere of influence, right? We're
and I've said this before, but as a pastor through the years, when people would come to me and say, well, I don't know my purpose, I'd always say, well, maybe you could work in the nursery, or maybe you're called to be an usher. In other words, somehow your purpose has to be within the church building.
Right.
So, and then all of a sudden they started seeing that there's many people have a destiny to transform the music industry, to go and design clothes that will glorify God, that will go and change the education system. So the true ministry isn't about what happens in the church building, even though that's important to minister to God's people, But primarily, to me, ministry is who you are throughout the week. And the church, and I was guilty of that for a long time.
Sure.
Try to pigeonhole everyone. Well, your destiny has to somehow fit within this church.
Right.
If you can't find a place, then there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people, they just say, well, that just does, I'm willing to help, but that's just not where my passion lies.
Right.
And then I saw there are people called to write poetry. There are people called to go into the rap industry and do better raps, bring the creativity of God out into the culture, to invade the culture.
Exactly.
And see, that's what's missing. We just see ministry as preaching, teaching.
Yeah.
That
activities inside the church.
What I do. So for me, that's ministry, right? I said that.
That's
I
your
say,
calling.
here, go ahead. Go pray. Here's the microphone. But that's my calling.
Right.
But for the majority of Christians, the calling is to go back.
To go out.
I always talk about the demoniac that was set free by Jesus.
Right.
And then afterwards, he got into the boat. Remember, Jesus cast all the demons into the pigs.
Yeah.
That was the first case in the Bible where it talked about devil came. Remember that?
I remember that.
Yeah,
I was waiting for that.
So the man said, I'm going to get with you in the boat. And what did that mean? I want to be like these disciples. I want to be in full-time ministry. I want to hang around.
Yes.
I want to lay hands on people in the crowd.
Sure.
And what did Jesus say? No, go back. Go back to your family. Go back and reveal me to them. And it said when he did, the people were amazed.
Yeah.
See, now, if he just hung around the temple courts or went into the synagogues, whatever, he would have touched people.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't have had the impact he had by going right in his everyday life. The people he saw every day,
Sure.
he was able to transform their hearts just by saying, look what Jesus did for me, and he can do it for you. Not by standing on a corner and preaching, which is, I mean, I do that. I'm not against it.
Sure.
But the greater thing, the greater impact is to one-on-one say, look at me. I used to be a demoniac, and people were afraid. And not only that, people knew that he had a reputation.
Wow.
So to me, that story shows really God's plan to change the world.
It's true.
Not for everyone to be in ministry in the church, or everyone tries to fit in the fivefold ministry.
Right.
That doesn't fit.
No.
There's so many people don't fit, but they don't have a clue what else to do with their gifts, so they try to fit themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
So why not go and prophesy in Hollywood? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's happening. I mean, we had my friend Tim call in a few months ago, and I spoke to him recently. And, you know, more and more, the movies are being made with godly messages, godly impact. The lives of directors, actors are being transformed. Massive prayer meetings in Hollywood. That wasn't possible a few years ago.
Yeah.
So to me, that's how it's got to happen. It's not going to happen through people like me.
No.
It's going to happen by the people who every day go back into the world.
Yes.
That's where the light is going to come, not by me. How many? I don't know how many people are going to go and listen to me preach.
Right.
But I know that one person who goes to work and loves and shows creativity and wisdom of God, how they can impact a lot more people than I can by preaching and teaching.
Yep, absolutely. And that's really what we're all about, you know, with the Dreams Network and the things that we do, is we want folks to get trained up, to understand who you really are in Christ, what you've been given, your identity as a son or daughter of God, and what that means in terms of what you're potentially able to do to change the world around you. You know, by you know, and you know, the whole Hollywood thing, right? The people that have gone into Hollywood and are having impact in that arena, none of them went in with guns blazing. You know, oh, you're all a bunch of sinners, you know, you're all going to hell. No, nobody did that. Nobody went in there and saying that we're against homosexual marriage, we're against, you know, whatever. That's not what they did. They went in and they basically began to love people right where they are. Why? Because it's not my job to change anybody. It's not even my job to convince somebody to be changed. My job is simply to show them that God is real, that he loves them, and invite them into that relationship where he can do what he needs to do. That's it. Okay. So I feel that one of the things that we really can, I guess, take away from this dream and what we've been talking about tonight is that it's time to re-examine what we've been doing, what the church has been doing. Because, you know, if folks have been engaged in these kinds of protests and these kinds of political actions and all that goes along with that, you know, trying to get legislation passed, if that's what people have been doing without living as salt, light, and yeast, you're not accomplishing anything. I'm just going to say it like that. You know, you may think that you're doing a great work for the Lord, but if you're not doing what Jesus, described and talked about in terms of, are you influencing people with the love of God, with the power of God, with his presence? If that's not happening, but you're doing all this other stuff, well, I would say you're pretty much what Paul talked about in 1 Corinthians 13. You're a loud crashing cymbal. You know, you're all this light and sound, but not light, but you're all sound and fury, but you're not accomplishing really anything. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Good. Case closed. Bye. Oh man, we've got some comments here.
No, but none of them are about the.
None of them are about what we're talking about.
People
Well,
are having a private conversation
Private-
on the chat box.
okay, I see how it is. All right, just ignore us.
Well,
Okay, we're
But to me, that's one of my greatest passions
Yeah.
is to see people be who they are,
Mhm.
not just in the church. You know,
Right.
people can show a lot of creativity and power
Yeah.
and talent in what they do in the church, and then feel like, well, that's it. You know,
Okay.
and instead of going out there and taking that same creativity.
okay.
What would happen if it was the Christians who were writing the greeting cards? Can you imagine the impact that would have? If there was a powerful Christian company that did greeting cards and started to redefine what that is, the
Sure.
messages that would be going out?
Well, and you know what? There are Christian greeting card companies.
No, but
Yeah.
see, the thing, that's always the problem. It becomes, this is the Christian movie
I
industry.
know.
This is the Christian music
Right.
industry.
Exactly.
I'm talking about invading, even though we start getting accused of dominion theology and all that. That's the comments people write under my stuff sometimes. But
So basically, what they're saying is, no, we don't want the King of Kings to have any influence over. You know?
no, because they believe everything is for the next world. We're just
Right.
here, but not in this world. We're not called to any of that.
Yeah.
It's all in the next world, you know, where it'll all happen. I don't see that in the Bible. Just what you said about yeast, what does that mean?
Sure. I mean, that is just so unbelievably irresponsible when people do that, you know, and that's a whole other topic, of course, but, you know, so much of the church sits back and actually rejoices at things like this horrible earthquake that occurred in Nepal, right? Because Jesus said that, you know, there's going to be earthquakes and there's going to be, you know
Well,
what I'm
people
saying?
see it. Well, now that means we're closer to the end.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, they look at every one of these disasters as, oh, another sign. Jesus is coming back soon, you know. And so that's the attitude. Well, we're just sitting here, we're holding on. Oh God, help us, you know, save us, blah blah blah. Instead of getting out there and being responsible to bring, you know, as we've been saying, salt, light, yeast. We're supposed to be an influence in this world. And man, I hope whoever's watching gets the message. You know, you all protest all you want, but if it's not, I mean, think about this. All of the protests, all of the arguing and debating about what's right and wrong, you might feel good because you did that, right? Oh man, I really represented, you know, God and the Bible and everything. I did all this kind of thing. Did you touch anybody's heart? You know, was anybody convinced by, you know, your well-constructed argument and your debates and whatnot? No.
The proof of what you're saying is back, say, 50 years ago when we didn't have a lot of these laws. You know, abortion was illegal. There was no gay marriage.
Yeah.
And even though it might not look the same, but there was just as much evil back then. The prejudice, injustice, hatred.
Oh,
Even when the laws seemed more favorable, even though in the South they still had, you know, the horrible laws, you know, racist laws.
oh, sure.
But overall, the laws, you know, now have become so on the other side, you know, where everything's okay. Now drugs, you know, pretty soon prostitution. You know,
Yeah.
back then, none of those things were legal, but yet everything still went on. People look back, oh, that was the golden year.
Yeah.
If you live through it, there's just as much abuse, just as much sin, just as much perversion as there is now. It just was maybe hidden more.
Right. Yeah.
So the laws didn't really didn't change the hearts, like you're saying.
No.
I mean, but again, we're not saying we don't want, you know, laws that line up with the word. It's just that's not the answer for the nation, no matter how good the laws are.
Sure. I mean, my gosh, all I gotta do is look at prohibition. You know, you know, like outlawed alcohol and people were getting drunk every.
Yeah, my grandfather, he was one of the guys. He used to make the gin in his bathtub.
Moonshine.
Yeah, he was one of those guys.
Oh my God.
He was in business with Dutch Schultz, who was one of the Jewish mobsters back then.
No way. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
You come from quite a checkered
I
past.
know.
Wow. Crazy stuff. So I don't know. I don't think we solved the problem here, but hopefully we got people thinking, in terms of what our real responsibility is, the real role that we're supposed to play in society. I've long maintained that abortion will become truly rare when you've got a majority of folks who know the Lord and know the value of life. You know what I mean? And that's the case for every single issue that you can look at societally that we know is not good. I mean, listen, how many unwed single moms are there out there that are struggling because they made a decision and they're being shunned, they're being cast aside by folks because you made your bed, now live in it, now lie in it, all these kind of things that we see. We have a choice in terms of, are we going to respond with the heart of the Father toward these folks, or are we simply going to judge them, label them, and walk away? And that's what a lot of folks want to do.
Mm-hmm.
You're this, you're that, and until you change, I don't want to, get out of my sight. I don't want to know you. I don't want to deal with you. And that's just Phariseeism, right? They wouldn't deal with anybody that was beneath their station, and that's what a lot of folks have taken up, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. I can see by the old clock on the wall that it's time for you to make don't you have an announcement, something you're doing tonight at 10 o'clock?
Am I? Yeah, I'm going to sleep.
No, you killed my whole promo here, going to sleep.
No. Yes, we're we're going to continue with the Free to Succeed program, and so you're welcome to jump onto that page tonight. It's on the Dreams Network site. Just look for Free to Succeed, and you can learn more about that. We're going to help folks to hopefully get freed up from some things that are holding them back from destiny and from purpose. Get some clarity on all that. We also do the Wednesday program. If people would write in, we haven't had any.
Well, let people know what exactly, because maybe not everybody knows what that would entail.
Yeah, it's just basically, writing in about your situation if you feel like you're stuck in some way. And we really just hear from God. It's a prophetic kind of ministry where we just allow the Lord to show us where the block is and what you're dealing with, and hopefully
you do that right on you're doing that live, so you're actually ministering to a person, but they can still be anonymous, right?
Oh yeah, they don't have to tell us any details that would be incriminating.
I have a friend that belongs to Gamble Anonymous.
Really?
He still gambles, but now nobody knows who he is.
See, that's the way to do it. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Oh, some of you are finding out that if you need counseling, don't go to him.
I know less about that than anyone you ever met. So you.
Really? All right. Well, it's been fun, and we'll hopefully be back next Monday, right? That's when we do this on Mondays. Yeah. Wow.
Russ, do you know who's the president? Do you know what year this is?
What's my name? Cool. All right. We'll be blessed, and we're going to switch over to the Dreams.
Oh, and I got program. A good joke to start off with. If people don't get on time, they're going to miss the joke.
Yeah. Something to look forward to. Absolutely. All righty. Be blessed. We'll see you next time.